Hello, and welcome back to Sleep Vibes Now. I'm so glad you're here with us tonight. We are beginning a new chapter on the channel, a series of meditative retellings of the stories, books, and movies that have shaped us. Tonight, we're going to step away from the noise of the modern world and journey back to the summer of 1959. We'll be revisiting the classic story of friendship and the long walk home. Stand by me. Before we begin, I want this to be a space where your favorite memories come to life. If there is a specific story, book, or movie you would like to hear retold in this style, please leave a comment below. I would love to hear what brings you peace. But for now, make yourself comfortable. Adjust your pillows. Let your breath slow to a natural rhythm. And let the world outside fade away. The tracks are waiting. The story begins in the dust of a hot Oregon afternoon. Vern Tessio was crawling beneath his family's porch, his fingers brushing through the dry earth in search of a jar of pennies he'd buried long ago. The air under there was cool and smelled of damp wood. It was in that quiet, hidden space that he overheard a secret about a boy named Ray Brower who had gone missing. Vern hurried to the treehouse to tell the others. There was Gordy, the quiet observer, Chris, the steady leader, and Teddy with his wild spirit. In the golden, hazy light of that wooden sanctuary, they made a choice. They wouldn't take the main roads. They would follow the railroad tracks, a straight, iron line leading deep into the heart of the wild. The journey truly began when they reached the edge of the town's memory, at the gates of the local junkyard. The air here was different. It smelled of rusted iron, sun-warmed rubber, and the sweet, heavy scent of overgrown weeds reclaiming old machinery. They walked past rows of forgotten cars, their chrome bumpers glinting like silver teeth in the afternoon sun. This was the kingdom of Milo Pressman and his legendary dog, Chopper. The boys moved with a quiet, held breath, their sneakers crunching softly on the dry gravel. They spoke in whispers about the tall tales they'd heard, about a dog trained to be a monster. But as they looked through the fence, they saw only a tired, golden-brown dog napping in the shadow of a crushed sedan. The fear that had tightened their chests began to dissolve, replaced by the realization that many of the world's monsters are just stories we tell ourselves. They left the junkyard behind, the sound of the rattling chain-link fence fading into the steady, rhythmic hum of the cicadas once again. By the second day, the heat had become a physical weight. They reached the high trestle bridge, a towering skeleton of iron and wood, spanning a deep, wide canyon. Below them, the river was a churning ribbon of silver and blue. Midway across the bridge, the world began to hum. It started as a faint tremor in the soles of their boots, a secret vibration rising from the iron Then came the sound, a low, distant roar, like a gathering storm. The train was coming. The boys began to run, their boots hitting the wooden ties in a steady, frantic beat. Step, leap, step. The air grew thick with the scent of hot grease and coal smoke. Behind them, the massive engine loomed like a wall of shadow. With a final, desperate burst of energy, they threw themselves from the tracks, tumbling down the soft dirt embankment. Just as the train thundered past, the wind from the passing cars was a cooling blow against their skin, and as the rhythmic clack, clack, clack of the wheels faded, a deep, heavy silence returned to the canyon. Early the next morning, before the others had stirred from their makeshift beds, Gordy sat alone by the tracks. The world was draped in a soft, silvery mist that clung to the tall grass like a veil. The air was cool and tasted of dew and morning pine. As he sat there in the profound silence, a movement caught his eye. From the thicket of trees emerged a deer, a doe, stepping delicately onto the iron rails. She was perfectly still, her large, dark eyes reflecting the first pale light of the dawn. For a long moment, time seemed to stop. There was no sound, no movement, just a shared breath between the boy and the wild. It was a private miracle, a piece of beauty that belonged to no one else. When she finally vanished back into the emerald shadows of the forest, Gordy didn't wake the others to tell them some things are better kept in the quiet spaces of the heart, tucked away like a cherished memory as the journey continued down the long iron path. As the sun began to dip, casting long purple shadows, the boys took a shortcut through a marsh. The water was dark and still, covered in a carpet of bright green duckweed. It felt cool against their tired legs, a brief relief from the dust of the tracks. But the water held its own secrets. When they finally scrambled onto the muddy bank, they found them, small, dark, and slick leeches attached to their skin. There was a moment of frantic movement, the shock of the cold water and the strange intruders, leaving them breathless. They sat on the bank as the adrenaline faded, replaced by a bone-deep tiredness. The woods around them grew quiet, as if the forest itself were settling down for the night, draped in a blanket of dusk. As the darkness deepened in the heart of the woods, the boys took turns keeping watch by the dying fire. The forest at night was a different world, a place of shifting shadows and mysterious sounds. From the blackness beyond the trees came strange mourning cries that echoed off the canyon walls. They huddled closer to the embers, the orange light flickering against their faces. To settle their nerves, Chris and Gordy talked in low, hushed tones about their futures, their voices blending with the crackle of the wood. They spoke of the weight of expectations and the simple desire to be someone else, somewhere else. The firelight grew smaller and smaller, turning into a single, pulsing coal. The vastness of the Oregon wilderness felt protective rather than frightening. A giant, leafy canopy sheltering 4 friends who were discovering that the bravest thing they could do was simply stay together in the dark. As the fire burned low, Gordy's voice took on a rhythmic, hypnotic quality as he began to weave a tale for the boys. The legend of Davy Hogan and the Great Contest of Greatside. Imagine a town draped in festive bunting, the air thick and sweet with the scent of 200 deep-dish blueberry pies cooling in the August sun. The crusts were golden and flaky, dusted with sugar that glinted like tiny diamonds. In Gordy's telling, the town square was a sea of faces, all blurred and hazy in the afternoon heat. Davy Hogan sat at the center of the long wooden table, a steady, calm figure amidst the mounting excitement. The contest began not with a bang, but with the slow, deliberate sound of silver forks meeting tin plates. Clink, clink, clink. The crowd began to chant, a low, pulsing vibration that started in the chest and filled the air. Go, go, go. It was a rhythmic tide, a wall of sound that seemed to slow down time itself. Davy moved with a singular purpose, the deep violet juice of the berries staining the table as he moved through pie after pie. The world around him faded away, the cheering, the heat, the pressure, leaving only the steady cadence of the chant. In the dreamlike version of the story, the chaotic ending wasn't a riot of noise, but a sweeping wave of blue that moved through the crowd like a ripple on a still pond, a strange and spectacular victory that left the town of Greatside forever changed. As Gordy's voice trailed off, the images of the blue-stained square began to dissolve into the smoke of the campfire, leaving the boys in a state of deep, heavy wonder. The legend was just another layer of the night, a story tucked away into the shadows of the Oregon woods as the stars continued their slow, silent rotation overhead. They found him near the back Harlow Road as the sky turned a bruised indigo. The sight was quiet and solemn. In that moment, the bravado of the journey vanished. They realized they weren't heroes in a story. They were just 4 boys a long way from home. When Ace Merrill and his gang arrived, demanding the body, Chris stood his ground. He didn't move. He stood in the fading light, a steady figure against the darkness of the trees. The confrontation ended not with a fight, but with the heavy realization that childhood was behind them. The gang's cars eventually roared away, leaving the four friends alone in the profound stillness of the Oregon night. The walk back was different. The tracks seemed shorter, the town of Castle Rock appearing on the horizon like a memory they had outgrown. They reached the outskirts of town just as the sun began to paint the sky in pale pinks and grays. One by one, they drifted toward their own homes. Finally, it was just Chris and Gordy. They shook hands, a gesture that felt older than they were, and Chris walked away into the morning mist. Years later, Gordy sat at a typewriter, the rhythmic clicking of the keys the only sound in his quiet house. He thought about that weekend and the friends he had when he was 12. The summer of '59 was over, and the tracks had led them exactly where they needed to go. The story is over now. The typewriter is silent. The house is quiet. It is time to rest. Sleep now. Sleep.